Hello, hello, and welcome to the webinar. I am broadcasting to you from Davenport, California, and I'm going to just stop the slide share for just a moment to give you a little hidey-ho from myself. I'm going to stop my screen sharing for right now and just say hi. Welcome. I'm happy that you're here. We are going to be talking about prayers and incantations today and learning the difference between prayers, spells, and incantations, how they're alike and how they're similar, and what you can do to make them work for you. So now I am glad that you're here. I am going to once again present the slides, and I may come and go with the slides today. I'm a lot less kind of tightly packed than I was last webinar, because I want to I want to allow for what needs to happen on this webinar, and that might mean questions and explaining some things. So you should be seeing the first slide. I'm going to ask for my assistant to let me know if the slides are wrong, but I'm now going to forward to the next slide, which is how to tell if you're in the right place. And that slide, sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, and that slide should be up right now. So you're in the right place with this webinar if you've been trying things like the law of attraction and those things are simply not working. Oftentimes people will start out and think that the law of attraction is the thing they need to do, and they are doing their best to think about what they want. Now there's a clue right there, but I'll go more into that in detail when we get to that point. But they're thinking about what they want, and it's not coming, and they wonder why. Well, you'll find out why in this webinar. You're in the right place if you wonder how you can integrate your spiritual life and your business so that you don't feel split. So many people are like, okay, I have my spiritual world over here and my business over here, and I feel like I want to be the same person. I want to be the same person everywhere. Well, this whole series of webinars is actually helping to address that question. Third way that you can tell that if you're in the right place is if you're stuck at a level or blocked and you can't get past whatever's keeping you there. And sometimes that has to do with a personal thing. Sometimes it has to do with a business thing. You know, you feel like, oh, I should be able to get affiliate partners, but I can't do it. Or I feel like I should be able to move forward with this or that item, and it just is not working somehow. And finally, and again, this one is for all of the webinars in this 3-webinar series, that you're doing all the right things, but you still can't make your life and business work for you. And this is really an endemic problem, because a lot of people are like thinking that they're failures in business, right? Because they can't make it work. But there's actually hidden stuff that we'll be talking about here next week and the following week that will give you clues as to what the right things actually are. And it's probably not what you think. And of course, the final thing is you can tell you're in the right place if you want magic. So magic is really a science, right? And I'm going to very briefly go over the whole way that we discuss magic as a science in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you that, you know, there's no reason, if you don't know me, to think, well, who is this guy? Who is Sage Lee, and what is he all about? Well, this is me. It's a very nice, flattering picture of me taken by the ocean, which is one of my favorite places to be, with one of my wizard staffs. Wizard staff or wand is just a way to direct energy. You can do it. Anybody can do it. Wizards aren't special people. They're people just like you and me. Doesn't matter if they're male or female. Doesn't matter if you're smart. Doesn't matter if you don't have to have the right stuff. You just have to do the work. You have to do the work, and then you can be the wizard. So I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in just a moment, but I want to just say that one of my favorite moments in the Wizard, not the Wizard of Oz, I almost said the Wizard of Oz, the Alice Through the Looking Glass material is when she meets the Red Queen for the first time. And she's holding onto the Red Queen's hand, and she's running as fast as she can. And the Red Queen is running and running and running as fast as she can. And she says, "My goodness, we're really running fast and we haven't moved anywhere." And the Red Queen says, "Well, my dear, you have to run as fast as you can around here just to stay in one place." And I think even though this book was written in the 19th century, he kind of predated the 21st century, when many of us feel like we are just running as fast as we can to stay in one place. Now, the very interesting thing about this is that when I told this story for years, I would say, "Oh, and then the Red Queen says to her, if we want to go over here, we have to go in the opposite direction," which is kind of an additional joke that I had added in that I thought was Lewis Carroll's original material, but it was not. It was not in the book. But I think it's indicative of the paradox that even then, back in my 20s, when I first started quoting this material, that I believed. Because we'll talk more about the paradox in a little bit, but there is a paradox of wanting something, and it's not exactly like you go in the opposite direction, but sometimes you get it by just going about your business, we'll just go over there. We set up the context for the prayer, because today's subject is prayer, and then we just walk over and do something else. But more about that in a little bit. So legerdemain is not what we're doing today. Legerdemain is tricks, hand tricks, card tricks, close-up magic. And it's tricks. It's the large gesture hiding the small gesture, fooling the mind. But we're not fooling the mind, because what we want to understand is that we are beyond the mundane. We're beyond the mundane, and we're here at Clarke's third law, which we went over last webinar. We're not going to go into it in a lot of detail, but it's any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And again, because we can reverse the subject and the object in a sentence that has an "is" in it, so we just say magic is indistinguishable from any sufficiently advanced technology, instead of, the other way around. So then we can say magic is advanced technology, because if something's indistinguishable from something else, is there really any difference in it? So magic really is advanced technology. Now, I have to say that some of the things that I am going to share with you today are going to be controversial for you to wrap your mind around, especially if you have a scientific mind. So I'm just going to ask you to leave your doubter, and of course everybody's got a healthy, or hopefully mine doesn't work all that well, but most of us have a very healthy skeptic, which is part of our ability to do critical thinking. If something sounds odd or impossible, then we're likely to say, well, wait a minute, let's question that. Now, the thing that separates me from a lot of people who teach this material is that I say, bring the skeptic on. Bring the skeptic in. Ask the skeptic what it has to say. Because my thing is, don't believe what I say, don't believe me. Test this stuff out for yourself. Test it out for yourself. Healthy skepticism is good. Okay, so here's me. I'm going to tell you a different story about myself than I told you last time. The story I'm going to tell you this time is about my early childhood and my teenage years. Now, when I was a teenager, I was very unhappy. I was, you know, a typical teenager, but I was a little bit creative, and I wanted to see the world. And I also was convinced that my parents were the worst parents in the world. And I truly believed this. I truly believed this, and wanted to exit my parents' home. Right? I was just like, these are the worst parents in the world. I've got to get out of here. I've got to prove to myself that that my world can be created and not be like these people. Now, to tell you the truth, from my viewpoint as an adult, my parents were not all that bad. They were a little bit eccentric, which is how I got to be a little bit eccentric. And yet at 15, I was convinced that I had to get out of there. So I ran away. I hitchhiked down the highway, and I hitchhiked first to an Allman Brothers concert. And I don't know what I was thinking, because I hate the Allman Brothers. I sort of hate Southern music altogether, with a couple of exceptions. And you know, I was like, okay, I'll go to this concert, because the friends that I was running away with also wanted to go to that concert. And then I hitchhiked from that city into yet another city. And once I had reached that city, I got a job. And I was a painter in a creative statuary company. In fact, the company was called Creative Statuary Company, and I had a job, and I stayed away from home for 9 months. It was a long time for a 15-year-old, and everyone thought I was 21. They thought I was older than I was, and what I did in that moment was I had an initiatory experience. And we'll talk more about that in the webinar that's happening in 2 weeks. But I decided that I had to do that, and it was dangerous. It was actually, I could have been injured or killed at any point in that journey. You know, a 15-year-old boy away from home, making my own way in the world. There's a lot of dangers out there. But I managed to make it. And I was able to then prove to myself that I could do anything. You know, there are some of us who believe that you can do anything, and some people who still, you know, at 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years old don't believe that they can do certain things. Well, I was able to run away from home at 15 years of age and get a job. Yow. Okay, it looks like we're all right. We are going to try and get the slides back online. I'm going to do that. And just pardon me for 1 minute, because, you know, sometimes I think I can do more than one thing at a time. And then I disappoint myself. I can't really do more than one thing at a time. So I'm now going to see if we can here we go. All right, we're going to try this one more time and see if we can make it work. Thank you, Gifford, for letting me know that people couldn't see this. I'm going to try it one more time. If that doesn't work, then I'll just have you see my pretty face. How about that? Okay. Many apologies for this. Okay, let's try it now. Here we go, present to everyone. Let's do it. Okay, so now we should be seeing the sleight of hand slide. Oops. Nope, now I'm gonna stop it again because that's not the right thing. All right, let's try it one more time. Sorry, folks. Hi. All right, so let me just tell you this other story while I'm trying to get this up and running. I discovered also that I could kind of get any job that I wanted. And I had this special thing that I would do where when I would go in for a job interview, I would decide that I was not just trying to get them to hire me, that I would decide that I was interviewing them as well. And so I would shake their hand, I would ask them questions, they would ask me questions, and soon it became really obvious that that I wasn't necessarily going to take the job if they offered it to me. And it's funny, every job that I went for, that I decided that I would get a job offer, and then I would decide whether I wanted to get the job or not. So it never occurred to me to think that anyone had a different experience than that. So I would, when I would talk to people and say they couldn't find a job, it would just perplex me because I had this method for getting jobs. Now it's a special technique, and I kind of learned it over time. And it's one of the things, we don't teach it directly in the School for Wizards, but it's kind of one of the things that gets taught in the School for Wizards. So, and some of the jobs that I've had have been very interesting. Like, for instance, I was a video game repair person, and I was able to repair the Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time Theater robots. I went to a special training, and they were, these Chuck E. Cheese robots that are, that sing Happy Birthday in the front of Chuck E. Cheese. I was repairing those. I would repair video games in the time when video arcades were a big deal and people weren't doing video games from their living room. I've been an art director for Fortune 500 companies. I've been able to do pretty much anything that I've wanted to do because I am using the secrets of prayer, spells, and incantations that I'm going to teach you this afternoon. So I'm going to teach you as much of this as I can. I'm really trying not to inundate you with like too much information. So so I might not teach you everything that I have on the dockets to teach you, but there's always more, and what I want to do is give you as much free information as I possibly can about the School for Wizards. So let me try this presentation thing one more time and see if it can work. Okay, here we go. All right. Now we should you should be able to see this screen that says any job. And I'm going to actually, before I go back into screen only mode, I'm just going to ask you to I'm going to ask you to share in the share zone here whether or not you can see the slides. Can see all right, Tyler says yes, can see the slides. That's awesome. Okay. I'm now going to thank you, Tyler, and thank you everyone for your patience. I'm now going to push ahead and let me go to full screen mode. There we go. Okay. Okay, I'm going to quickly review some definitions, and I want you to, if you want to write things down, I want you to write these definitions down. A wizard is a person of either gender who is living their life the way life was designed to be lived, and with a balanced feeling of power, and with the knowledge and skills to do things others might think impossible. All right, we did that one before. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But now I'm going to say, let's define prayer. Now, this is the dictionary definition of prayer, which is a solemn request for help or expression of thanks addressed to God or an object of worship. Right? So just hold that in your mind for a moment. A solemn request for help or expression of thanks. Now, notice prayer is not always a request for help. Sometimes prayer is just like, hey, thanks. And we'll discover why the second half is the most important part. Now, here is the more complicated definition of a spell. A spell is a form of words used as a magical charm or incantation. Or a spell is a state of enchantment caused by a magic spell. Right? The magician may cast a spell on himself. Third, it's an ability to control or influence people as though one had magical power over them. She's afraid you are waking up from her spell, right? So think of some ways, and you can put them in the chat room. Think of some ways that that you have been under a spell, right? How have you seen others under a spell that you knew they were under a spell and they didn't know it? Have you woken up one day and said, "Oh, wow, it was like I was asleep," or it was like I had a spell cast over me, right? How has this happened to you? And believe me, it's happened to all of us. And I'll tell you more about the way that the spell is ubiquitous or common to everyone very shortly. So let's define incantation. A use of spells or verbal charms spoken or sung as part of a ritual of magic. Also a written or recited formula of words designed to produce a particular effect. Right? So look at that second half of the definition, a written or recited formula of words designed to produce a particular effect. Now this is from the root incante, meaning to chant or bewitched. Now given this definition, would a play be an incantation? It's a written or recited formula of words designed to produce a particular effect. I would say yes. A play is an incantation, right? A movie is an incantation, right? Are you getting how that these words are not like dark magic things that are not part of our world already? They are part of our world. So I'm going to check in one more time real quickly because I want to make sure that we're all having a good experience here. Oh, can't see the slides again. Oh, darn. I don't know why this keeps happening. It looks like I can see. All right, I'm going to try one more time. Hello. And once we try this time, you're just gonna have to look at my pretty face the whole time, okay? Because I'm not going to spend any more time. I want to teach you about spells and incantations. So I'm going to try one more time to do this. And that's the last time, okay? Promise. Sharing. And all right, now I can see the messages as well. So, oh, it happens when I go full screen. Okay, all right. I'm just going to keep it not at full screen then, and then we'll move on from there. So, let me share some things with you about creation. About creation. So, science has this odd thing. Science is weird, isn't it? Like, I like it, and I study it all the time, but it's weird. So I want to share some things about creation with you. The first is that we are intelligent expressions of an intelligent universe. Now, this intelligence is baked in at the most fundamental levels. Science has proclaimed that it is all chance, as if intelligence suddenly began with humans. We must dissuade ourselves of this notion, right? We've got to get rid of this idea. And there's this great quote from Ken Wilber, which I'm going to now give you, which is about this scientific proclamation that we're all just frisky dirt. He says the bleakness of the modern scientific proclamation is chilling. In that extraordinary journey from matter to body to mind to soul to spirit, scientific materialism halted the journey at the very first stage and proclaimed all subsequent developments to be nothing but arrangements of frisky dirt. Now, why this dirt would get right up and eventually start writing poetry was not explained. Or rather, it was explained by dumb chance and dumb selection, as if two dumbs would make a Shakespeare. Any consciousness that saw something other than matter was definitely hallucinating, right? But we're not hallucinating, and there is something more than matter. And if you think about it, there's a lot that's been made fun of in science about intelligent design, as if there is some great, as they call it, spaghetti monster in the sky, which has created everything, and it's the intelligence. Well, what if the intelligence was the entire universe is intelligent, and on the earth, through hundreds of thousands and millions of years, it has created us, right? Eventually, in the last, 20 seconds of the year of life, if you take it down to a year, has created us. And so suddenly we think that we're the only thing that's creative after this million-year history of intelligence, right? But we can't. There is one thing that is really unique to us, and that is imagination, right? Imagination is the ability to form new images and sensations in the mind that are not perceived through senses such as sight, hearing, or other senses, right? So if we are able to form new images and sensations without experiencing them in our senses, then that means that we are creators. We are like the divine because we can create. And I'll give you an example of this. I'm going to do this with all of you right now. First, I'm going to define something else. Language. The method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured and conventional way. Now, boring, right? But listen to this. Consisting of the use of words in a structured and conventional way, right? Language. So there is the biogram, or the part of us that feels, senses, experiences, has a body, feels things, has desires. And then there is the thing called the logogram, right? The biogram and the logogram. And the logogram is everything that has to do with this language piece. this language piece of communication, right? This wonder that we have. Now, so I'm going to do an experiment right now. I want you to look at the screen, and I want you to just read the words. Think of a pink elephant. Now, when you read the words, think of a pink elephant, just write in the chat room, in the chat room, tell me, did you see a pink elephant in your mind's eye? Just answer in the screen, did you see a pink elephant in your mind's eye? Okay, nobody's responding. Did you think of a pink elephant? All right, I'm going to just assume that everybody's fingers are broken. But I am going to continue to look at the screen. There we go. Yep, Lynn says, thought of a pink elephant. Many of you did, like some of you might not have, but was there a pink elephant? Well, yes, there was, because it was in your mind, right? Right? Tyler thought about a shaved mammoth. It seems legit, right? That means that Tyler's imagination was working, right? Because instead of thinking of a pink elephant, he thought of the way that an elephant could actually get to be pink. Amazing. Our minds have this ability to do this, right? But here's what we do. When we get born, and I spoke of this a little bit last time, but this is so important. I really want you to get this, that when we show up in the world, we're showing up to learn, right? We're learning what it is to be human, and we have these eyes, and there's a bunch of photons coming in and striking our retinas and then going through our optic nerve back to our brains, and then there's all these nerves in our bodies and our systems. And when we first get here, we have no idea what an eye is, what a you is. We don't even have any idea what a hand or a foot or a blanket or a mother is. We're just like soaking up information. And there's so much information. It depends on who you ask, because a lot of people say this, but it depends on who you ask. And it's anywhere from millions to billions of bits of information coming into your sensory system every second. Every second. And so what we need to do in order to become human, in order to get to the place where we can have this imagination, is we've got to filter out all that huge rush of stuff that's coming into us. And so we learn to make distinctions, right? We learn this is a foot and this is not a foot. Like this baby is actually seeing that there's a foot, right? He's putting his foot in his mouth. Many of you did this. and biting the foot, and it's like, oh, if I bite the foot, I feel it in this other part of, or in this other part. I mean, I don't even think there's even any concept of parts, but I'm biting my foot. It's a different sensation than when I bite the blanket. So these two things must be different, right? We're just making these really gross distinctions, right? This thing is not this thing. And then we're distorting. We're going, okay, well, and this is where we get into the most trouble when it comes to magic, because we take these things that are actually quite magical and quite informational, like our imaginary friends, and how we discuss things with them and how we talk to them and how we hear them and speak to them. And then we find that the distortion of our world requires that we not have an imaginary friend. And then in our, adults say, oh, you're just making that up. That's not real. Because it doesn't fit in with the way that we have to act as humans, right? There are science fiction books, the Golden Compass I'm thinking of in particular, where the daemon, or the anima or animus of a person, is in animal form and is visible to others, right? this could actually be possible, right? There could be a visual representation of our anima or animus that exists in the world, and we don't have any way of seeing it because we've very early on decided that our mass hallucination says that this is not possible. So I'm putting this slide up here to make sure that you get how powerful our ability to filter stuff out is, and that there is a wondrous world at our fingertips. Now, the other thing is that it could be a terrifying world, right? When suddenly your world starts breaking down, or you start going, okay, well, I'm seeing these colored shapes around people, and I don't know what they are, right? There is a natural auric field around people. It's called an aura. And if you relax enough, you can see it. You know, there's an energetic field, and there's agreement between people about what that field looks like when you are able to see it. And this is just one of many things that are possible. So when people are trying to manifest with the law of attraction, the idea is pretty simple. You think of what you want, and some people teach this with more skill than others, but essentially you think of what you want, and then you get it. And instead of thinking about what you don't want, you think about what you want. Well, that is extremely simple, right? So why doesn't this, magnetic attractor thing work all the time? Well, I'm going to give you some steps as to why it doesn't. But I wanted to also remind you of something. And this is around being aware in your own mind and in your own heart and in your own body of your responsibility as a wizard. Because we use the same stuff as the devil. Now, Napoleon Hill wrote a book called Outwitting the Devil. And in this book, he says, it's really a conversation with the devil, and it was not published in his lifetime. It was published posthumously, and after both he and his wife died, because nobody knew what to do with this book. They just were afraid that it was going to wreck his career, much like the Red Book with Carl Jung. He was like, I can't publish this, and I have no intention of publishing this because it would wreck my career. But this is a word by word, recorded conversation with the devil. And at one point, Napoleon Hill says to the devil, well, how come, you're the one that you call your enemy, God doesn't just vanquish you? And he says very eloquently, he says, well, it's because we're all using the same stuff to create with. The same power that is available to the one you call God and to me, which he made Napoleon Hill call him His Majesty, right? He says, the same power is available to you or me or the one you call God. It's the same stuff. And so since we're all using the same stuff, that same stuff can be used for nefarious purposes, for evil purposes, or for good. So the question you always want to ask yourself when you're doing this work, when you're doing this prayer and spell and incantation work is, am I doing this for the good of all? Like, what is for the greatest good of all? Right? And include yourself in the all. Some of us don't. But what is for the greatest good of all? And that's the place to start. That's not the only rule you need to live by as a wizard, but that's a good place to start. So we are creation engines. So why is it that we can't create all the time, right? If we're engines of creation, then what's the problem? Why can't we just create all the time? Well, I'm going to tell you a series of stories, and I'm going to make them brief stories because I want to give you some time for questions if you have them. So number one is the feeling is the prayer, right? And Julia will know this because she did the 2-day Power of Manifestation workshop with me back in February. But here's what I want to add to that, and maybe, Julia, hearing it again, you'll get something more out of it. But when we pray, or when we are praying for the purposes of manifestation, the feeling itself is the prayer. And all over the world, when you meet people who are from so-called indigenous cultures or from cultures that have had a long history of prayer, and you say, well, what are you doing? Or you get some kind of insight into them, it's always, well, we're just getting ourselves into the feeling state of this. It's like we pray for world peace. Well, we just become world peace. We become peaceful in ourselves. If we pray rain, we go out into the medicine wheel and we bow to the four directions, and then we have the experience of rain upon our faces and the smell of rain after a rainfall, and the way that the buds of the corn open up when the rain falls. We have a full sensory experience of what that is, right? So step one, knowing that the feeling is the prayer, and knowing that if you can get yourself to a place where you have gratitude for what you are wishing for, like if no one can convince you that you don't already have it, even though it's not in your hand at the moment, then you are well on your way to manifesting it. Because the brain, the human mind, is an amazing thing, and it actually codes for the appearance of something in your life and sends instructions out into the universe through all of our subconscious behavior. Like all this stuff, it sounds really mystical, but think about it. If you are grateful, like Lady Gaga or Madonna, if you are grateful to the universe that you are already a megastar, even though you are singing at the strip club, then it is inevitable that happened, right? It was the reason I use Lady Gaga and Madonna is, first of all, Madonna has actually studied the same material that we teach in the School for Wizards, and she's achieved some of this stuff because of that. But Lady Gaga and Madonna they're good singers. They are good singers. Don't get me wrong, but they're not the best singers in the world. There are other people who are, who can hold pitch better and who are, who just like technically better singers than them. But those other singers didn't say, I'm a superstar, right? Not, I want to be a superstar, but I am. They would just tell people. And sometimes that would get laughter in the early parts of their careers. People would laugh, and sometimes people would be like, oh, okay, yeah, of course that's going to happen. And all of their subconscious actions led people to treat them that way, right? It was taking the conscious mind, being grateful for it, and then it rolls into the unconscious mind. So here's something that's very difficult to grasp around manifestation and praying. So hurt is the teacher. You have to understand that your hurt is the opportunity for turning into wisdom, right? And there's a whole lot of research that indicates that, that our bodies are actually designed to live much longer than 100 years, but that we suspend your disbelief just for a second and know that there is a bunch of study out there that if you're able to tone down your emotional responses to life situations and learn from the hurts, get the wisdom from the hurts, and then let them go, then we could potentially live longer, right? When our souls hurt, our pain is transmitted into our bodies as the spiritual quality of the life force that we feed into each cell, right? It's possible that after 100 years, we just are too hurt to go on. But if we can actually change that hurt into wisdom, here's how to do it, right? Hurt comes from the way we interpret an experience. Changing the way that we feel about what has happened shifts our focus in the cycle. When an experience hurts so much, it's easier to deny it or just distract ourselves from it or in some way avoid dealing with it, then address it head on, then we might find ourselves getting stuck in the feelings, right? Every one of us has this power to transmute the hurt, and when we do, it's transmuted into the healed form of wisdom, regardless of where it comes from. Right? The experience that originally caused the hurt remains unchanged. What changes is the way that we feel about our suffering, and that creates the power, right? Hurt is the teacher. So step 3, and we did this when we did our Power of Manifestation event. We thought of someone who had hurt us or some way that we had been hurt. And then we practiced blessing. Blessing. And blessing is the way to release. And the thing is, you only have to have a microsecond of release. Like if something really horrible has happened to you, then, sustaining a feeling of constant forgiveness might not be the easiest thing to do. It might not even seem possible at all. But if you are able to, just for a moment, bless the sufferer, and sometimes that sufferer is you, right? And then bless those who cause the suffering. If the blessing can be heartfelt, right? Rumi says, out beyond good and evil, there's a field. I'll meet you there. Right? It's that field beyond right doing and wrong doing. And it changes the chemistry of our minds. Blessing all aspects of those hurtful things, the sufferer, the suffering, the witness to the suffering. When we bless someone who's hurt us, we aren't suggesting that what's happened is okay in any way, or that we'd like it to happen again. Blessing doesn't condone or make excuses for any atrocity or act of suffering. It doesn't put a stamp of approval on a hurtful event or suggest that we would ever choose to re-experience it. What blessing does do is free us from our painful experiences, and it acknowledges that those events, whatever they were, have occurred. Now, why is it important to do this? I mean, all you're doing is just like making a prayer, right? What do you have to do all this hurt and blessing and releasing and the sufferer and all that? What is going on here? It's because this stuff is in our unconscious and holds us back, right? We might have received some hurt as a child about receiving money. Our mother or father might have said in some unconscious moment, don't take that money. You don't deserve it. Or what you did wasn't worth that. And then we take that and we hold on to it. And we carry it over into, okay, well, here I am, being grateful that I have $100,000 this year, or 200,000, or $1 million this year. But what happens is that these old hurts get in the way. They're unconscious, and they get in the way. So we have to go in and dig them. We have to dig in the dirt for these pieces of carnelian, as Rumi calls them. So I'm going to go to step 4, which is to choose beauty. So once we have had that moment of release of the hurt and the re-experiencing of the wisdom, and people did this in the workshop, and they were blown away by this. Powerful experiences come out of this. Then we find that we can choose beauty. Now, here's the thing. There's beauty everywhere because beauty is an experience, right? And we think that beauty should be something, like a beautiful sunset, or like that building is nice, or that bridge is nice, or oh, those were nice words, that was beautiful. And in the Navajo tradition, they talk often about the beauty upon which you base your life. We each create our own standard by which we measure beauty. So I wonder if you could just say what on the chat line, what is your experience of beauty? What is beautiful to you? And in this really excellent book called Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer, Greg Braden has a story. And he was in India, and he is looking around and finally sees this guy, and he's looks in this direction, and his eyes are met by this really intense gaze, and this face of this man was like barely above his knees. He was like, he had to look down, but it was really intense. And he realizes almost at once that the guy has no legs, and that he's on a little wheeled cart. And so the guy, and he doesn't speak any English at all. And so he brings him over, sort of after having a little start of like not really understanding what the heck is going on. He skillfully pushes himself over and guides Greg to this place where he sees this amazing temple, right? This amazing wooden temple with like thousands and thousands of gods on it, right? And he sort of presents this building to him, and immediately Greg reaches into his pocket, to because he thinks he's a beggar, like, oh, he's going to bring me here and then he's going to ask for money. Well, the man didn't want anything, right? He just wanted to show him the beauty, right? He just wanted the beauty. And he also tells a story of this man who unloads everyone's suitcases. They come to a hotel. This man unloads their suitcases, is really sweet, and then disappears. And he asks at the hotel, hey, what about that man who unloaded? I'd like to give him a tip. He's like, oh no, he doesn't work here. He just likes it when visitors come, and it's this thing that he does. Right? So have our experience of beauty, right? This feeling, right, that we call, that the ancients called prayer, is actually the most powerful force in the universe. The most powerful force in the universe. So step 5 is to be the prayer. And really, this was step 1 and step 4, right? To be the prayer, because we first need to realize that the prayer is the feeling. But we think of prayer as something that we do, right? So I settle down at night, I might, and if I'm really traditional, I might kneel by my bed and clasp my hands together, and I might say, well, here's what I want, here's what I want, here's what I want. But what if prayer was not what you did, but the state of being that you were in? What if it was the state of being that you were in? What if your prayer for world peace meant that you were peaceful, right? What if your prayer for $1 million meant that you were able to give away $1 million to those who need it most? What if you were just being your prayer? What if you like Lady Gaga or Madonna could just say what you wanted, or say what you were, say what you are? Not even just say it, but be what you are. Now I have another, oh, sorry, we're going backwards. Okay. So there's a whole other raft of information that I didn't get to because I was overly ambitious about what I planned for our webinar today, but I wanted to get you those steps because with them, you can actually manifest. And those of you who were at Victoria was also at the manifestation weekend in February. And if you remember, we practice this. And if you've forgotten how to practice it, then continue to do it. Again, the steps are, go all the way back. So get that the feeling is the prayer. So be attentive to what you're feeling. Know that the universe is the perfect mirror. If you're feeling crappy, it's going to reflect crap back to you. If you're feeling great, it's going to reflect great things back to you. And the mistake that we make is that we think that all bad thoughts are forbidden, right? So that's why we say hurt is the teacher. You know, what we want to do is not deny that stuff that happened to us, but experience it, gather the wisdom from it, and release it with a blessing, right? Some might call this blessing part forgiveness, but it's not necessarily forgiveness. It's just simply a blessing. Then we choose beauty. We choose whatever form of beauty comes to us, and then we become the prayer. We be the prayer. If you're not being the prayer, then here's your opportunity to do it. Now, there's another thing that we study in the School for Wizards, and it's Yahe-Vahe, which is the format of creation. This is another way that the how do I say it in my own language? You are, once you make this prayer, like, you don't just sit on your thumbs, right? Everybody who was in that movie, The Secret, was not a thumb sitter honor. They did things. They might have done weird things and things that you wouldn't have expected would net them the results that they did, but they did things, and they did things in this order. So this is, it's written in Hebrew, it's read from right to left, Yad He Vav He, or Yahe-Vahe, or Jehovah, if you, Yehovah, Yeshua. This is the formula for creation, and we don't have time to go through it today, but I promise you that I will cover it in a subsequent webinar, and certainly in the private group on the School for Wizards. So Yahe-Vahe, think about it. Open hand is Yod, window is Vav, nail is, window is He, Vav is nail, and He, the next window. I'll explain to you how that represents the power and format of manifestation in the next, well, probably not the next call because we're doing initiation on the next call, but I plan to have these webinars every 2 weeks. And again, for those of you who are not yet in the School for Wizards and want to talk to me about getting in it, please, I'm going to show you where to go. Oops. schoolforwizards.com/path-of-initiation. Schedule a session with me. And Lynn, we might want to set something up like that this week. And I know, Tyler, I want to talk to you as well. Additionally, Victoria, you're already in like Flynn with the School for Wizards. I'm so happy that you all are on the call today. And that's what I have for you. I'm really happy, and I'm sorry for the odd disappearance of the slides. We tested this last week at length and discovered that we could, in fact, see the slides when they were full screen, but apparently that is no longer the case. So thank you so much for your time and energy, and I will actually entertain questions. If you If you if you have questions for me, you can write them in the chat screen. I'm looking at it right now, and I'll answer any of the questions that you have. I see Len. Yes, let's set something up. And yay. All right, with that, I've given you a lot to chew on, and I sort of created this this thing for you at the end, and I promise in my emails to you that I will review that and let you see that. But hopefully you took some notes as well. So with that, have a blessed and wonderful. Actually, let me stop sharing long enough to say goodbye to you. There we go. Hi. Really, really happy that you joined me today, and really, really happy that you've joined me for prayers and incantations. Do some prayers and incantations. You know, like write a play. Do a street performance. Write some poetry. Just activate your creative imagination, and you'll be surprised at what that will do to actually begin to bring things into your life. You are an amazing creature of the universe and a creation par none, par excellence, non-pareil. There's no comparing you with anyone else, because you are perfect just the way you are. I love you. Bye-bye.